Hey, welcome back to Crimes and Closets. This is Christy in my closet in St. Louis.
And this is Beth in my closet in North Carolina.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome in.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I sound weird. Sorry. I have allergies. Still have that. Still happening.
Still going on.
Sports and allergies. That's all we do around here.
It was actually funny because this morning I watched the Today Show. I think I've mentioned that every morning with my coffee. And they were talking about like right now how allergy season is like the worst it's ever been, I think.
I think they say
Or
that
it's really
every
bad.
year.
Well, probably. It's like the Bachelor season. This is the most dramatic season of The Bachelor in history. So yeah, that's probably true. But like the little blurb at the bottom was like, is it allergies or COVID? We have the answers.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. No.
News
Anyway.
stations these days.
Yeah.
I think that there is probably a school for people to go to for like catchy headlines.
Oh.
That's all your job is, to come up with headlines that make people be like, what? Click.
Yeah.
Like click.
It's just writers.
Yeah. But that's their only job is headlines. They don't write the story.
Oh, yeah,
they don't like their only job is to like be a clickbait headline writer.
Yeah. That's true. Allergies or COVID? I don't know. Let me see.
I know. We have the answers. What are the answers, sir? Click.
Too bad I wasn't actually listening to that segment, so I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't have the answers for you right now.
It's allergies for me.
It is.
But I did take a test. Because you got to be careful. You really don't know.
No. And now it's like cold and flu season too, or colds. I shouldn't say that because that's kind of passing, but like people are getting colds too. And so everyone's just freaking out and nobody's wearing masks. So everybody's actually catching the cold.
Yeah, we're spreading crap.
Or they're not wearing masks. Yeah. So anyway, so Langdon got sick and I test him because I know, if I send him back to school, they're going to be like, what's going on? And so the nurse actually called one time and I was like, I will let you know I'm a serial tester. She just laughed and laughed and laughed. And she's like, I needed that laugh today. And I was like, you can't be too sure. So test him. This way, when I get the phone call, I'd be like, nope, negative. It's fine.
That could be a headline. Why you should be a serial tester. See, you could write them.
Yeah. And I mean, I know maybe like other people would just be like, I'm just not sending my kids even if they have colds, which is totally great and awesome, except that child stays home and then runs around the house playing basketball. And so I'm sorry, you are well enough to sit through school.
Yes.
You're fine. You're fine.
So I have one home today because yesterday was his birthday and he had football practice and he got a concussion and had to glue his eyebrow. So I kept him home. It's spring break is happening. Like they're not doing anything anyway. And so drama, sports.
There you go.
Drama. That's what we're doing. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
Okay.
Happy, also real quick, I'm cheersing myself.
Cheers.
Because today, while we're recording this intro, is my 18-year cancer-free anniversary.
Woohoo! Cheers to that. Clink, clink,
clink, clink.
Water, but yes, that's amazing. Literally amazing news. We're so happy that you beat the C word, the other C word, the bigger C word.
So many people right now too, like that we know that are fighting, and it's like, yep. Anyway,
but we are thankful for your story and that it continues 18 years and counting, girl.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's ever something that you don't like say yes on the day of.
Yeah.
It's like your birthday.
100%. Your second chance day.
Right. Like, hey, this is it. I used to like not plan for it, but like it used to be, I would know it's coming like weeks in advance. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's coming. And I'd be excited for some reason. So I was nervous in the beginning, but I only remembered like yesterday.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, tomorrow's it. Whoa. I almost missed it.
It is around your actual birthday too.
Yeah, it's 4 days after.
Cool.
Mm. Yeah. So, yeah.
Okay. If you're not a Patreon, go be a Patreon, because also on Friday, a new one is going to drop. That's real good.
Yeah.
I chose it. It's me. I'm the listener suggester. So that's
Yes,
cool.
that was
And we do have my sister joined our Patreon. So thank you, Laura. You're the best sister.
Yes, thank you.
Mom.com. It was a real labor of love figuring it out for her, but we got it. So it's good. And we're glad to have you in the closet, sister.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So
that's all the news.
That's all it. You got all the updates and news?
Complete.
Okay. Well, then, you ready for a story?
I am.
Here we go. Okay. So, you ready for a case?
I'm ready.
Okay. All right, good. I've got one for you, and it was a suggestion from Allison on Instagram. She is actually a friend of mine from North Carolina.
Oh, hello, Allison.
Yes. We went to the same church.
Oh.
And they just moved out west to church plant. And they also just started a podcast.
Okay, yes. I remember you telling me about Allison. Hello.
Yes, Peace in the Valley, if anybody wants to check that out. They just talk at night while over snacks and talk about raising teens.
Whoa.
Kids and having peace in the valley.
Love it.
I enjoy it. So anyways, she sent this to us, and it is the case of Sherri Rasmussen, which is somewhat of a big one that I've seen a lot of. So Sherri was born February 7th, 1957 to Nels and Loretta Rasmussen. She has two sisters, Connie and Teresa. She was a very kind and gentle, hardworking woman. So hardworking that she became a nurse at the age of 20, which to me is pretty quick.
I was a mess when I was 20, so.
Well, I was a mess. I didn't graduate until I was 21, so I don't know, if she, graduated earlier than she was supposed to or went through. But anyway, she became a nurse at 20, and then by 27, she was the director of critical care nursing department at Glendale Adventist Hospital in Glendale, California. So she's, kind of high up by the time she's 27.
Yeah, she's the boss lady.
Yeah, she was. She met John Ruetten in the summer of 1984, he's an engineer, and they got married on November 23rd, 1985, and lived in a townhome in Van Nuys, California. I've heard that name before, but I had no idea where it was, so I had to look up. It's about 45 minutes northwest of Los Angeles.
Okay.
So just so you have a reference point. On the morning of February 24th, 1986, the day started out just as any other would have. John typically leaves for work before Sherri, and that morning Sherri was contemplating calling out sick because part of her job was to supervise some of these lectures that I guess she wasn't so much a fan of. She didn't really feel like they were beneficial, and so she didn't like doing them. So she was like, well, maybe I'll just call out sick today.
Okay, Sherri.
Yeah. John left for work, unsure if she was you. He was like, do what you want. If you stay home, go back to sleep. Get some extra sleep, whatever.
Yeah, play hooky, girl.
Yeah. So he thought about calling her sometime in the morning, but then was like, well, if she decided to not go in and she fell back asleep, I don't want to disturb her, so I won't call her. So then later on, he calls her at the office in the hospital, and her assistant was like, well, I haven't seen her yet, but that isn't unusual. She's like, when she has lectures, she doesn't typically come in here before she does that. And so, whatever, it's fine. She just isn't here yet. So he arrives home later that day from work, and he pulls up to the garage, which was ground level. So they're in a townhome. Mm-hmm. So their garage is ground level, but then they have a balcony above that is on their second floor. Mm-hmm. And when he pulled up to the garage, he saw there was some broken glass in front of the garage door, but he didn't really think anything of it because Sherri can be kind of klutzy. Well, I don't know if this is klutzy, but haphazard. And he was like, well, maybe she just hit her mirror as she was pulling out and it broke and whatever. She's just going to keep going because, well, what are you going to do in that moment? Just we'll get it fixed later. So that's what he thought it was. So then he walked into the home and he found Sherri on the floor of the living room as soon as he walked in, not moving. As he got closer, he saw that she had blood all over her, bruises on her face, and when he touched her, she was cold to the touch, so he knew she'd probably already gone. He immediately called the police, and when they arrived, they found Sherri had been beaten and shot 3 times.
Oh,
Later,
my.
Yes. Later identified by as .38 caliber bullets. She was shot twice in the chest and then 1 time in the abdomen. And then there was also a bite mark on her left arm, like her left forearm.
Okay. Like a human bite mark?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Like there was a struggle and someone bit her to like get her to let go or whatever.
We have a biter. Okay.
Yes, we have a biter. They did swab the bite mark for DNA and took impressions, hoping that later they would try and like match it to like dental records of somebody or sometime at, I don't know when, but I was a little bit surprised that they took DNA because it was 1986. And I felt like, was that a thing yet? Or maybe it was just like in the beginning stages. And so they were like, let's do it so that we have it for when we can. I don't know.
Well, it's also possible too that they just swabbed it to get a swab of it and not necessarily for DNA, but later they were able to use it. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that's true.
Later they were like, oh, you took a swab? There'll be DNA on that. So they didn't like specifically know that's what they were swabbing for, but it turned out that's what they got. So
I guess I'm just questioning like what they thought they were swabbing it for.
Just
at the
evidence.
time. Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. So there is also right close near her and right at the bottom of the stairs, there's a VCR and stereo stacked up, just sitting on the floor there. And there's a smudge of blood on top of it. There was no sign of forced entry into the apartment. There was a couple of shelves that had been knocked over and the balcony door upstairs was broken.
Okay.
So that was the sliding glass door that was above the garage, which was the glass that he saw, but didn't notice that he didn't look up to see, because I guess he didn't think, well, why would my glass sliding door be broken?
Okay.
Anyway, so it definitely looks as if there was a struggle, happening in the apartment. And there's a large vase on the floor next to her. The investigators on the case also found a quilt nearby, and it had bullet holes with powder burns on it. So the first shot had been taken from a distance, but then the second and third ones were taken point blank.
Okay.
To make sure she was dead, essentially. So whoever did this muffled it with the quilt and was also like determined to make sure she wasn't going to make it.
Okay.
So they also said that the first shot would have killed her. She would have bled out within minutes. So there really wasn't any need for those last two. So it was intentional. It was assumed that there was some sort of struggle, like I said, and that the person bit her to break free, possibly hit her over the head with that vase that was on the floor to stun her. And so because maybe there was a struggle over the gun and she got it away, and so they needed to do something. This was just all speculation based on like stuff that was,
she fought though.
Her. Yeah. Sherri's car was missing from the garage. So initially John had thought like she wasn't home from work yet.
Right.
Her car wasn't in there. But it was just found a week later on a street in Van Nuys, unlocked with the car, with the keys in the ignition. So that was the only thing that was taken from the house. Well, that and their marriage certificate. Nothing else was taken. There was all of the jewelry, the stereo and the VCR that was stacked right there. Marriage certificate and the car was taken.
Wait. How did they even discover the marriage certificate was missing?
Well, that I don't know.
Was there like an open cabinet with files in it and that was taken?
So I don't know that for sure. I will say that they're newlyweds, and so it's possible that it was out somewhere that he noticed right away, but I don't know. I don't know for sure. I don't know for sure.
Did they ever find it? Was it in the car?
I don't think it was in the car.
Huh. So that's weird.
No. Yeah, it is weird, and I think it was mentioned a lot as we go through this case and we find out truths about it, why it was the one thing that was taken. So I think it's just mentioned everywhere because this is there's reasons why.
It's important.
Anyway,
Got it.
it's important. The initial investigators right away said, this is a burglary gone wrong. Someone came in thinking no one was there. Sherri surprised them. They killed her and left. A few days later, another break-in not far happened. So then this just kind of solidified their idea that, okay, this is just what happened. Like,
but nothing was taken. Doesn't make any sense at all.
Exactly.
Okay.
But in this investigator's mind, this is where he went, and this is where what he stuck to. He was like, it was a burglary. Then the burglary happened. Okay, yes, for sure, this is what happened. And then he even had, suspects, these two drawings of suspects, two Latin men that he was convinced were the people who committed these crimes.
Okay.
So, John was interrogated extensively because clearly we always look to the husband first.
Mm-hmm. And the person that found the person. Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Two whammies.
Ultimately, he was cleared because he didn't have any motive. There was no insurance money, no clear issues in their marriage, nothing that pointed at him at the time. So he was cleared pretty quickly. Nels, Sherri's dad, was not convinced it was burglary from the start. Within the first days of the investigation, he spoke to the lead investigator and asked him, hey, have you talked to or looked into John's ex-girlfriend, that lady cop? He could not remember her name, but he had heard about her from Sherri. And so he was like, you need to look into this lady.
Oh, what did he hear?
Okay. So within the weeks preceding the murder, Sherri had told her parents about this woman who she thought was still pining for John. Like she's still after him. She thought that they still had something going on at certain points because this lady would just pop up at their house unannounced.
What?
And so she was like, why does she come? Like at one point, I think she came right after she would have left for work. And so she started thinking, oh, wait, maybe she comes after I leave for work all the time. So she talked to John about it. John was assuring her, no, there's nothing going on. I'm not seeing her anymore. We should just ignore her and eventually she'll go away. Let's just ignore her.
Okay.
Another time she dropped off, she came by with skis and was like, can you wax these or I don't know, whatever you do to make skis look better or perform better.
Can't
I don't
you
know.
do it yourself?
Well, you would think. Ugh. But anyway, so she does this and Sherri was like, I think this was just an excuse to be able to come by the house and see John. She didn't really need him to do it. And so she kind of was like, John, I don't want you to do it. Don't do her any favors. Just stop.
No.
And he was like,
you're not her person to go to get your skis waxed.
Yeah, exactly. No.
And don't pop up at my house. That's a red flag right there. If anybody comes to my house and I don't know they're coming, I'm sorry. We have a problem. Unless you're trying
especially
to
if you're an
me.
ex.
Yeah, if you're not my friend or my family, and kind of even if you are, give a girl a holler before you come on by, you know?
Right. Yes, exactly. So she asked him, like I said, please don't do this. But he did it anyway for her and she comes back to get the skis and whatever. Then, according to a coworker of Sherri's, Sherri would mention, and she also kind of witnessed, I think, some of this stuff that she would just kind of be around in places that Sherri was, and it was just strange and awkward.
All right, she's stalking Sherri.
Right. And then there was one time she came a couple of days, I think, maybe a week before the murder, that she came to the hospital that Sherri was working in dressed, they said provocatively. I don't really know exactly what she was wearing, but it said provocatively. And she stated to Sherri, if I cannot have John, no one can. And when your marriage fails, I will be there to pick up the pieces.
Okay.
Yeah, she's a little crazy, I think. And she's a cop.
Oh my gosh.
Nels also thinks it's interesting that only the car, which was an engagement gift to Sherri from John, and the marriage certificate were the two things missing. So there's where that's coming. She's pissed. I'm going to take the engagement present and the marriage certificate because those two are significant things for her.
Okay.
Scorned ex-girlfriend makes a whole lot of sense here.
Scorned, kind of crazy ex-girlfriend.
Yeah, crazy ex-girlfriend. Mm-hmm. In a report initially, they suggest that a struggle occurred for possibly an hour or more.
Oh.
Not sure, except for like how things looked in the house, that how they determined that that was the length of time, because I feel like it probably could have happened much quicker than that. I don't know, like something happens upstairs, you break the window, you come down the stairs, you struggle down there and shoot. Like, to me, I don't know how they understand that that's an hour or more, but that's what they're thinking. And so Nels is also like focusing on that and saying, okay, so wait, you still think it's a robbery, and you think these two Latin men came in, and that my daughter, although I think she's strong, fought these men off for an hour? Like, does that make sense?
Right.
No, it doesn't. So John also states that early on he had mentioned his ex-girlfriend. So now this is Nels mentioning the ex-girlfriend, and John
Nels
saying
is her dad, right?
Nels is her dad.
Okay.
John's the husband. And they're both saying that early on in the investigation, we mentioned you should take a look. Like, John wasn't convinced that she had something to do with it, but he was like, well, but it's something to mention. And he said he did it within 2 days of the murder, and Nels said that it was within a few days, so that he mentioned it. So anyway, also, okay, so he also admits later on in the investigation, I actually want to say it was years and years later, that the ex-girlfriend had come by one day after he was engaged and was like expressing how upset she was that he was engaged, and like crying and saying not to get married, and that she loved him and blah, 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 blah. And he was like, sorry, I'm in love with Sherri. I'm getting married. Like, this is going to happen. But they did sleep together one last time.
Okay.
For closure for her.
No.
Can I tell y'all, that there's no closure for anybody that no. I don't know how I'm like going to explain this, but you don't get closure. You just get like, oh, well, I still have a shot.
Right.
He's sleeping with me even though he's engaged, saying that it's over. But is it really? I don't know.
Right.
To me, especially in a crazy person's mind.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, John.
Not a good idea.
Doesn't need to be. He's waxing more than her skis. My gosh.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's get to know this ex-girlfriend a bit. Her name is Stephanie Lazarus, and she's a police officer, as I mentioned. She met John in college, and they lived in the same dorm building and hung out with the same people. So they've known each other for a little while. They dated here and there through the years, but it was never anything serious, according to John. And I want to say that she even kind of says that, but clearly she had a lot more feelings for him than he did. So, to me, she's definitely someone to be looked into based on all the stuff that we're hearing from Nels' dad and whatever.
Well, based on her behavior.
Right. Yes. The investigator on the case just keeps pursuing this burglary route and legitimately never, ever looks into Stephanie.
Nice.
Doesn't talk to her. Nothing. Nothing. And then even Nels would contact him like multiple times. Like he would continue contacting the investigator to like mention it. Like, hey, have you? He kept pursuing it. And the cop even said, you need to stop this. There's no reason. You just watch too many cop shows. Like, there's no reason to think that she has anything to do with this. So just drop it.
Do you think it was because she was a cop?
Well, that's part of, yes.
Okay.
Yes. I 100% believe that it's because she's a cop.
Okay.
That maybe he didn't want to look into one of his own. And maybe he truly felt like, well, it's not, she wouldn't have killed her over this. Like, I mean, she was a pretty well-known and well-respected police officer. So maybe he really didn't think she had anything to do with it, but he still should have given it a look. I mean, and so, I don't know.
Like, just figure out where she was that day. That's all you have to do.
Right, exactly. Was she on duty? Was she not? Whatever. Nothing. But nothing was ever done. Nothing. He would actually, even the lead investigator would go on record years later to say that he was never made aware of Stephanie as a suspect. And in the case file, there were pages that would be missing that would be the pages that would be included like early on where, oh, Nels mentioned this. John mentioned this person. You know, like those pages were missing.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And so he was like, that she wasn't even mentioned to me. There was one note made years after, and that was still in the case file, that only said John confirmed Stephanie was his ex. That was the only note about her in the case file, period, which was like a random note because why would she have to be confirmed when she hasn't even been mentioned prior to this, or we don't see the pages that she was mentioned prior to this. So anyway, you can imagine by now this, like, where my head's going, like, freaking police. Like, you know, you're not doing your job. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing in this. So needless to say, this case kind of goes cold because they never find these guys that are burglarizing. They don't have any other leads to go on because there's no one else to look into, quote unquote, except Stephanie, but he's refusing to do it. So Stephanie goes on to have this great career in law enforcement. She starts out as a patrol officer. Then she moves into the art theft department, which I guess is kind of high profile because it's like people with a lot of money have these big pieces of art and they get stolen, and then there's an investigation and it was like in the news, and so she kind of has this high profile-ish role.
Interesting.
Yeah. She taught DARE for a while.
Oh, DARE.
She was in the homicide department and in internal affairs as well, apparently. So
wow,
she's a really well-respected police officer. She's even raised funds to start a daycare for police officers in the police department so that they would have somewhere to send their children. She had a stellar record as a cop. She got married and eventually adopted a daughter of her own.
So
Not a
her
blip.
and John never got together after Sherri's death.
So
She
no,
moved on.
She did move on.
Found somebody
and so
else to
did
wax
John.
her skis.
She did.
Okay.
She 100% did. And John actually remarried after that and I think had a family on his own. But there was I think in like 1989 that comes up at some point in this investigation that they did go to Hawaii, or he met her in Hawaii, but she went with another guy friend of hers, and then he went to Hawaii also at the same time and met them. I don't think there was anything romantic, but I don't know. Clearly, I have no idea. But there was a note that he had called the investigator, or at least he says he did. He said before he went to Hawaii, he called the investigator to make sure that there was no reason to think that Stephanie had anything to do with his wife's murder. And the guy was like, no. And so it's like he did kind of come back to it at one point to make sure that he wasn't about to go and like hang out with somebody who murdered his wife.
Right.
So it still was in his head, even a couple years later. Anyway, so they both get married, move on. Nels,
Dad,
good old
right?
Nels, dad, yes, never gives up on trying to find out who killed his daughter. He's now offering a $10,000 reward for info leading to an arrest, and this is in 1993, so this is like 7 years after her murder. And this is also when he starts hearing about DNA testing. And so he's like, oh, well, this is interesting. Let me give that investigator a call now and see what his thoughts are on getting, those swabs tested. So he gives him a call, and he was told that they have a limited budget and that they could not do this. They didn't have the money to do it. So Nels was like, well, I got some money. I'll pay for it. I even contacted a lab that's willing to do it. So let's get this show on the road.
Nels.
Yeah, Nels, thanks.
Oh, dads are the best. Well, some dads. Nels was the best.
Yes. Yes, Nels, her dad was the best. So he was told by the investigator that without a suspect, the DNA testing would do no good to the case because there was nothing to compare it to.
Right, because
And
there was
he's
no
like,
CODIS at that time or anything, right?
Right. Yes, exactly. But he's like, but you do have a suspect. You just refuse to look into her. Like, come on, if you do this, and then you can prove that she has nothing to do with it then, if that's how you want to do this.
Yeah, you can, Nels.
Right, yeah. So, again, after this, because he gets refused, Sherri's case goes cold for another 11 years.
Oh, no. Bless his heart. Oh.
In 2001, a cold case unit was created, but it took them 3 years to get to Sherri's because they're like going over all these cold cases with a fine-tooth comb to like see if they can solve any of them. But it took them 3 years to get to hers because they had so many other ones. So they finally open it in 2004.
Wow.
And the investigator looking into it sees that there were samples taken in the crime report, but they can't find the actual samples in the file.
Oh no, they're with the pages, aren't they?
Right, probably.
Oh no.
No, we know where they are. Hold on. She notes that in 1993, the same year Nels asks them to test the DNA, another detective signs out all of the forensic evidence in this case to go for testing.
Oh, okay.
But there's no note. Like, usually there's a request from the investigator with like, okay, we're going to put this request in and this person's going to come and pick it up. There was no request put in. This guy is just said to have signed all of it out to go for testing. But there are no test results ever recorded, nothing. So the evidence just then is just missing because they're like, well, where is it? It didn't go for testing. It's not in this file. What the heck happened to it? Why did this guy do this? And then this guy is now saying, I don't have any memory of taking that evidence out. So A, did he take it out and like lose it because somebody asked him? Or B, did somebody use his name? And he really has no recollection of it because they were like, oh, this guy's a nobody in the department. They won't ever look into him. You know, like, I don't know. I don't know.
Huh.
Those just my...
Okay. I'm getting nervous.
I know. Don't get nervous. Don't get nervous. Okay. So this cold case investigator that's looking into it, she understands the process. So she knows that evidence is taken from a victim's body and would be held in the coroner's freezer during the time that the investigation is active. And then at some point after that, it would be gathered and stored in a file. So she calls the initial coroner's office and inquires about it. They can't find any file on it or don't find any of the forensic stuff in the file on it. So they physically go to search the freezer themselves, where they find an envelope with a file number that's worn off so they can't see it, but the name Rasmussen was written on it.
Oh.
And inside there was a tube, little screw top tube with 2 swabs inside.
Just like a COVID test, guys.
Yeah, just like a COVID test.
I think about that when I have to go do COVID testing, how it's like very crime scene-y, but anyway.
It is crime scene. Send this away.
Yep.
So in January of 2005, they get the DNA test results back and they find out it came from a woman.
Well.
It's a woman's DNA.
And this is the bite mark, correct?
Yes, this is from the bite mark. So this now negates your burglary theory, Mr. Investigator, or at least puts a wrench in it. Like, it wasn't those 2 Latin men, because then he's like, well, one of them could have been a woman. It's probably still the 2 burglars, but it could have been a woman. Anyway, whatever. So, and he also, let me mention this, years ago, it was questioned if it could be from a woman because they said women are more likely to bite than a man. But he was like, well, men can do it. They would do it if they needed to. But anyway.
Biting is kind of a last-ditch effort to get away or something. You know, like if you're a man.
Or to get somebody to let go of something.
Right.
I feel like.
Yeah.
Or let go of you, I think. If you're like holding maybe and you just have that advantage right there. I don't know. So anyway. Again, though, she doesn't have any notes about Stephanie. Because the case file doesn't.
Oh my gosh.
So again, it goes cold because she's like, well, okay, so now we know it's a woman, but where do I go from here? Who do I look at from here?
Yeah.
Because I've got nobody.
Oh my gosh. Call Nell.
Yeah, right, exactly. And she needs to call Nels. So it fizzles out again for another several more years. And in 2009, 2 new investigators were assigned to look at the case again and take a deep dive. They come up with their own theory on what happened in the townhome. They said instead of Sherri surprising the burglars, someone came into the home and surprised her upstairs. Because I think she was still like in her pajamas and like robe when she was found. The intruder shot at her twice, shattering those sliding glass doors, which they said makes consistent because of the way they were broken out. The glass went out. So, and they were bowed in such a way that would be consistent with them being shot at. So they said that then Sherri probably ran down the stairs to possibly get out of the townhome or maybe push the panic button on her alarm system because she had one when the intruder catches up to her and attacks her. They struggle, and this is when they think she's bitten on the arm, maybe to cause her to let go of the attacker, like I said. The attacker then hits her over the head with that vase that was next to her to stun her. Grabs the gun, shoots her in the chest, and then grabs a quilt to shoot her 2 more times and stages the scene as a burglary because the stack of electronics was right there. And so that's why they also said it was like they were surprised and put it down, whatever, but then left without it. Anyway,
And in a car too, that was parked in a garage. Like no one sees you. You've got time to like load the car up.
Yeah, exactly. Now that she's dead and you've muffled 2 shots.
And can I just say too, Sherri, holy smokes, she did all of that while shot in the stomach.
No. She didn't get shot until
okay.
downstairs after the struggle is what they're saying.
Okay, understood. Got it.
Yeah, like she was shot at twice upstairs, but they missed.
Got it.
That's how the sliding glass door is. So she didn't get shot at until she was downstairs.
Okay.
Or shot.
Still, man, what a fighter.
I know. She was a fighter. So they're saying that it was staged for reasons we've already said. Like they could have had time. But the other reason was the VCR and stereo were stacked like very neatly right next to the stairs. And so they're like, if there's a struggle happening, don't you think something would have gotten moved and pushed out of place or whatever? And they're just sitting there. And also the smudge of blood that was on top leads them to think that they touched this after this happened. And it was just a smudge. It wasn't a fingerprint. So they think whoever was wearing gloves.
Okay.
So they think they were just staging it as a burglary. These investigators also catch the one comment in the notes about John confirming Stephanie was an ex. And this is where they're like, well, why is that even mentioned? Like, why did we have to confirm Stephanie was an ex? What does she have to do with anything? So they start looking into that. They find... They're like, first thing we have to do is find out if she's on duty that day because she's not going to commit a murder. Most cops will not commit a murder if they're on duty. She was not. She was off that day.
Huh.
They also know that police officers usually have 2 weapons, and they wouldn't commit a crime with their service weapon, like their on-duty weapon.
Okay.
But maybe they would if they used their other one. So they look into her weapons and look up, and they find that right after graduating from the academy, Stephanie purchased a .38 caliber Smith & Wesson. They look up both registered weapons, and Stephanie had reported her off-duty weapon stolen weeks after the murder.
Huh. Wow.
So now they're like, well, she must have gotten rid of that.
So annoying. All of that could have been done so long ago.
If the one lead investigator would have just given this one iota of attention. So it's at this point that they bring in the info to their supervisors and are like, okay, because they didn't want to, because clearly it's a cop. And if they're going to make an accusation, they need to be sure, or at least be kind of sure that they are barking up the wrong tree, because they don't like to accuse each other of crimes. So
right.
They take it to their supervisor and they're like, we need to get her DNA. And the supervisor's like, yep, okay. This needs to be a covert operation, though.
Oh.
Tell no one. Nobody should know, because when I tell you, she works across the hall from where they're investigating her.
Oh,
So,
wow.
proximity-wise, everything's super close. And they're like, you guys are basically the only ones that can kind of know about this. Like, you have to have a small group of people. So they end up following her for like weeks. Until one day she's at Costco with her daughter, and they sit outside and have a snack, and she throws away a cup and a straw, which the investigators go and collect. And when they get the results, it's a match. The chances that Stephanie was not the person who bit Sherri is something like 7 octillion billion whatever, that large number that you always hear when it comes to DNA with so many zeros at the end that basically means there's 0 chance it was somebody else.
Yes, understood.
This is what it was. That. So they're like, okay, well, now we need to bring her in and talk to her. We don't want to like tip her off. So they go over to her in the office and they're like, hey, we have someone in custody right now that is involved in a case that you are investigating. So we want to bring you over and so you can have a chat with him, blah, blah, blah. So they bring her into an interrogation room, and they have a hidden camera, and they start talking to her. They start asking her questions about John and how she knows him, and if she knew Sherri, blah, 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 blah. And at first she's kind of like, what does that have to do with anything? He's like, well, John was mentioned in this case. So we just kind of, and then you're connected to him by this. So we just want to kind of get some background information. So
okay.
She's like, okay. And she's real squirrely in this interview.
I bet.
She basically, at first she's like, I don't remember if I've met her. And then it turns into, well, sure, it's possible that we had some conversations. And then about 30 minutes in, she's like, Yeah, I think I now remember I may have gone to the hospital to talk to Sherri. So it's like slowly she's like, things are sounding familiar. Now that you're talking to me about this, yeah, I kind of remember that. But what she says is that she went to tell Sherri that she needs to have John, like, Sherri, tell John to leave me alone. Y'all are engaged, but he keeps calling me. So that's what she said that she was telling Sherri. Doubtful. She's basically babbling on and on and on about things. I watched this interrogation's over an hour, and I watched the entire thing. And it was fascinating to watch her, and just like she like stumbles over words and whatever. You can tell that she was basically lying just straight from the beginning. She's super awkward. She eventually gets to a point where she thinks that they think she's, a suspect in this. And she's like, okay, it sounds like I need a lawyer. You guys are suspecting me. I probably shouldn't talk anymore. And this is insane. I don't know why you think I have anything to do with this, blah, blah, blah. And so they're like, well, you're free to go. Like, we just wanted to talk to you about some stuff, and you're free to go anytime. Like, you're not under arrest, whatever. So she's like, okay, well, I think you think I'm a suspect and I need to get out of here. So she gets up to leave. She walks out, is immediately arrested outside the room.
Oh my gosh.
Murder. And within 2 minutes, they bring her right back into that room. They read her rights and ask if she would like to speak to them. And she's like, nope. And so they take her out and walk her to jail. Journals of hers were found during their investigation, because clearly once they arrest her, they have a little bit of time to pull some other stuff together. And they can see how she talked about how depressed she was when she found out about John, and how she still loved him. And so blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, she was not giving into any of that during the interrogation.
Right.
She was like, yeah, we broke up. We were friends. Like, whatever.
He kept calling me.
Yeah, exactly. Her trial starts early 2012, and in March of 2012, she's convicted of first-degree murder, and in May of 2012 is sentenced to 27 years to life. 26 years after Sherri's murder. So was this investigated poorly on purpose because a cop was mentioned? My opinion? Yeah, I think so.
So... And you may not know this, but the cop, the bad investigator, the neglectful investigator, I guess we should say, was he still around when she was actually convicted, or even living?
He's retired. He's been interviewed since.
Oh, what's he saying?
Basically, like, he had no reason to think. Yeah, like, they had no reason to think that it was her, and there was no reason, and she wasn't mentioned. This is when all the stuff of... She wasn't mentioned early on, so we didn't hear about her till years later, and there was no reason to think that she had anything to do with it, because she was a decorated cop and whatever, which wasn't true.
So him taking the pages out, right, where the notes in the file, they never proved that. They just suspect that happened.
Yes, they just suspect it happened, and they actually did do an investigation into how this was investigated, and they ended up concluding that there was no way to prove that anything was done purposefully to impede this investigation. So they didn't.
Her bird is excited.
No, it's actually my dog.
Oh, her
She's
dog.
walking around shaking, making a noise. So they did investigate it, but said that there was no way to prove that anything wrongful had happened, or they did anything wrong on purpose, which I think is bull. But anyway.
Well, I guess if there's no way to prove it. Okay. And Nels saw this woman arrested and sentenced. Good. Okay. Yeah. So he saw justice served for his daughter, and wow.
And I will say, I'm going to post pictures of this lady, and she looks so crazy. In all the pictures that, during her trial, she's her eyes are always bugging out and crazy looking. And one of the things that Sherri had said to her dad or coworkers is that she had one day felt like she was being followed by somebody who was wearing a hoodie or whatever, but she got a glimpse of the person's eyes and they just looked crazy, they were haunting. And so everybody was like, that's probably the eyes that Sherri saw that time. They were she's I'll send you pictures before this case comes out, but she's crazy looking. So also didn't read it, but there is a book didn't read it basically because it's almost 600 pages from what I saw. And it's called The Lazarus Files, a cold case investigation by Matthew McGaw, who just took a deep dive into this. And I would like to read it probably one day just to get like really specifics about the case, because he had access to like everything essentially once she was convicted. So I would like to read it, but I could not read 600 pages before this.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like there was enough out there. You didn't really.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So anyway.
Poor Sherri. Oh my gosh. That was really mishandled.
Yeah.
By everybody.
Yes.
By her husband. Kind of mishandled that situation. Like.
Well, yeah. And the fact that he didn't push, to have her, I guess because he didn't really think that she had anything, like, yeah, she was nutty, but he didn't really think that meant she would kill his wife. But I don't know. In one of the trials, when they got to speak, I guess maybe that was like victim impact statements that they were making. He did actually, during his, apologize to the family. I watched part of it, and he was like, because it kills me to know that she died because she met me. Mm-hmm. Like,
yeah,
that was the only reason she died.
It was someone from his past.
Me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he seems super remorseful about,
I'm sure,
all of it, but
that's sad.
Yeah.
It's a sad case, but I'm so glad that they figured it out. It's just a real shame.
Yeah.
That it took so long and that she did not spend her life in prison. She didn't pay, you know what I mean? Like she was able to.
She had a fantastic career.
Yeah. And a life that Sherri didn't get to have. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep. Good case.
Yeah, it was a good one.
Mm-hmm. I like it.
Thanks, Allison.
Thanks, Allison. Thanks for the case. Thanks for telling it. I definitely know the name Rasmussen. Mm-hmm. Super cool name.
Yeah.
That's sad. Okay. I kind of want to read the book.
Well, I do too. And so I may actually do it at some point, and then we can still give it away, even if it's, who knows, maybe I'll read it before this actually drops.
You're not going to do that.
No.
We're going to move on.
I'm having trouble reading the book that I've been reading for, I don't know how many weeks. Ugh.
Me too. I'm having trouble.
I don't know why. I'm not in a reading mood right now. Mm-hmm. So, anyway.
I feel that. I'm not either, but this was a good case. Sad. Mm-hmm. Justice was served, so that's good. But like, oh gosh, crimes are never rewarding. I don't know why we do this.
No.
Well, we're glad that you guys are at least on the ride with us, and good suggestion, Allison. Okay. Happy Monday. Thanks for hanging out. Come find us on social media. Join our Patreon if you want more. And always remember, the world is scary. People suck. Hide in your closet.